Good afternoon, dear friends. Unfortunately, I'm going to talk about a tragedy that occurred in Azerbaijan today. Briefly speaking, landmines dropped by the Armenian military on the large areas of the territories of Azerbaijan Republic continue killing innocent Azerbaijani civilians. Today is the 4th of June 2021. The Prosecutor General's Office and the Interior Ministry of Azerbaijan Republic published a joint statement in the first half of the day. According to the statement, 3 civilians lost their lives and 4 others were injured in a landmine blast in Kalbajar district. One of these young people was a correspondent, TV correspondent. The second young man was his colleague. They both worked for one of the most influential mass media groups in Azerbaijan Republic. The third man was one of the local authorities. The explosion occurred, according to the statement, joint statement, at 11 a.m. on June 4 in Susuzluk village of Kalbajar district. Susuzluk is the name of the village. It's not the first tragedy. It's not the first crime committed by the hidden secret criminals against the Azerbaijani civilians. Landmines took the lives of over 120 Azerbaijanis, and many people got injured while visiting those territories liberated from the occupation. Well, for how long should this situation continue? Is there any responsibility for the perpetration of these grave breaches of international humanitarian law and war crimes? And who can be held responsible? Well, Azerbaijani military, law enforcement and security agencies take all necessary measures in order to prevent, prosecute and punish all those who are behind this evil, and should therefore be held responsible for the perpetration of these international crimes. As a lawyer and as an expert on security issues, I am well aware of this fact, because I read newspapers, I live in this country, I am an Azerbaijani citizen, I know the situation very well. However, the efforts of one state in such situations cannot be enough, cannot be sufficient. The Azerbaijani state or any other state, any other superpower state cannot deal with adequately with this kind of challenge. Why? First of all those landmines dropped by the Armenian military personnel who have already left the liberated Azerbaijani territories. They are located on the territories of the neighboring Armenia. So I'm not going to remind you the principles of international law, including non-intervention, state immunity, etc. and etc. But all those who may be responsible for these deadly landmine crimes, they hide on the territories of Armenia. Therefore, the appropriate authorities of Armenia must act as soon as possible in accordance with the law of their own country and in accordance with the norms and principles of international law, in order to prevent further civilian losses on the territories, on the liberated territories of the Azerbaijani Republic. If you are a good neighbor, if you want to become a good neighbor, if you want to cooperate, in that case you must be interested in dealing with this evil. You must be interested in preventing the innocent civilians' losses. Isn't it that? Isn't that true? From this perspective, one of the most important tasks for the Armenian government is to submit the detailed landmines map or maps to the Azerbaijani authorities as soon as possible. That's the task number one. If you want to demonstrate your good intention, your goodwill, if you want to build a safer future, a more prosperous future, in that case, that's the step number one to be taken, the measure number one. The second challenge for Armenia under current circumstances is to prevent, prosecute and punish all those former military or maybe even current military personnel who secretly or hiddenly and illegally cross the Azerbaijani borders, come to the liberated territories, drop mines on specific locations and disappear again. But some of them couldn't disappear. They were caught by the Azerbaijani law enforcement and they are currently under the court investigation. Well, taking into consideration the extremely sensitive situation in the whole world, taking into consideration the pandemics, taking into consideration the geopolitical movements, I think the above listed two tasks should be taken into consideration as a real test for the Armenian statehood. Because if the landmines will continue to kill the innocent Azerbaijani people, irrespective of the fact that they are military or they are civilians, then the situation will never become easy. Problems will increase and the responses will be inescapable. Such kinds of provocations, therefore, constitute a real threat to the peace and security in the whole region. Well, from that perspective, refusing to submit the landmines maps and evaluating these civilian losses as normal must be regarded as a complete disrespect, not only towards Azerbaijan, but also to Russian Federation. Because the peace processes were launched jointly by the President of Azerbaijan Republic, by the President of Russian Federation, and by the Prime Minister of Armenia. When Armenian military forces left the territories of former Nagorno-Karabakh, or left the territories occupied in early 90s. So these acts, these crimes must also be evaluated as a complete disrespect towards the distinguished peace builders from the three countries and from the rest of the world. Well, for how long can this situation go on? Is there any responsibility? We all know that, we all are aware of the fact that military options, wars, are detrimental to the whole region. The military operation of any kind can destroy the peace and stability in the region, because the peace and stability in this region is very sensitive at the time being. Because of this reason, we must resolve all of the problems by legal means, by international legal means. What does international law say? If you are saying that, well, Armenia has not signed any anti-landmines conventions, therefore we do not bear any legal responsibility, international legal responsibility. In my humble opinion, that's not the right position. That will not save your reputation and your position. Because We all know that originally the use of landmines used to be a matter of customary international law, customary international humanitarian law. So, and we all know that customary international law is usually adhered to in a more strict way. I'm not going to talk a lot about the international law, international customary law. I think there are enough international legal specialists in Armenia to deal with this task. But the use of landmines in a similar ways is definitely a crime, is definitely a grave breach of international humanitarian law, and is definitely a war crime. Using landmines in that way that Armenia does at the time being is to be considered, and is considered, as a clear violation of two fundamental principles of international humanitarian law. Which are those principles? The first principle is the distinction between civilians and combatants must be made in any cases. Today's landmine explosion killed civilians. The village of Susuzluk is not located on the border with Armenia. As far as I know, there is no any military object on the territory of that village. And more importantly, we are not in times of war anymore. So there is no war, there is no any military operation being carried out. What was the main reason for dropping that landmine? Is that a newly dropped landmine, or is that one of landmines which had been dropped before Armenian military left the territories of Kalbajar district? So, the first principle I'm citing one more time: military personnel must be able to distinguish combatants and non-combatants clearly in times of active military operations or while dropping landmines. If there is a suspicion that you plant this landmine on a specific location and some civilians can touch that landmine and that will destroy their lives, that may kill them, in that case, even if there is a single suspicion that the landmine dropped by the military personnel can harm civilians, in that case, the military commandment must take a decision and they must refrain from dropping that landmine on that specific location. That's the principle under international law, international humanitarian law. The second principle, prohibition of unnecessary suffering. Well, we live in the 21st century, and mode of wars changed a lot. By killing civilians, by killing innocent people, the military commandment, the military personnel cannot achieve their goals. It's not possible. You can kill someone who is a civilian, but that will not help you. In the course of the 44 days war, Armenian armed forces bombed Ganja and Barda and other civilian districts, including Tatar. Did those bombings help Armenian military to achieve their goals, to stop the Azerbaijani attacks? Not at all. That didn't help. But unfortunately, many civilian, innocent civilian people, including children, lost their lives. For what? So Armenia violated the principle of the prohibition of unnecessary suffering. I would like to underline one fact one more time. Are there anyone in Armenia who thinks that the war is not over yet? Because if you refuse to submit the landmines map, because if you do not prevent your military personnel to cross the Azerbaijani borders illegally, come, drop the landmines on specific locations and then disappear, then it means that there was someone in Armenia, some people, who are of the opinion that the war is not over yet. And because of that reason, they do not submit the exact location of the landmines, and they do not prevent their military equipment and military personnel to be used against the Azerbaijani forces, and Azerbaijani, in particular Azerbaijani civilians. Well, I would like to conclude my today's speech or conversation. I would like to ask you to submit your comments. I would like to invite all lawyers to support the justice and the fair treatment. I would like to invite all international lawyers to submit their proposals, to submit their position. How can this issue be resolved? By what means? Maybe we can all together raise awareness in the world, so that some Armenian politicians and some Armenian military personnel stop this kind of hostilities. Because one day there will be some kind of responses. it's natural. Each state reserves the right to response. It's a norm of international law as well. Well, landmine problem is a global one, we all know that. I don't know the exact number, but thousands of innocent civilians, innocent people die each year due to landmine accidents, and possibly double that number are seriously maimed. This is one side of the tragedy, but there is another side of this tragedy. If we consider the current situation in our region, we know that the landmines does not only devastate the fortunes of human beings, they devastate, they destroy the whole nations, they destroy countries, they destroy the whole regions. Because of this reason, I think it's about time to take all necessary measures in order to prevent this kind of crimes, including great breach of international humanitarian law and war crimes. Well, let's wish that today's tragedy, those crimes which were perpetrated today, including international great breach of international humanitarian law and war crimes, will be the last one, at least will be the last one. And let's hope that perpetrators will be discovered, found, prosecuted and punished in accordance with the principles of law and international law. Well, thank you very much for your attention.